Hey, Zarina Matcha here. In today's video, I'm going to be discussing rapid releasing a romance series in 1 year. From 2021 to the present, July 2022, I have self-published 12 single books, 4 box sets, and 2 duets. This is under the pen name Diana Vale in the new adult steamy contemporary romance genre. All of the books are part of the Kirk universe that I created and were originally all going to be standalones that are part of the wider Kirk University series. However, I have since split the books into 3 separate series based on couple types. My Kirk University series has heterosexual couples, my Kirk Guys series has gay male couples, and my Kirk Gal series currently only has 1 book with a lesbian couple. I'll be discussing why I split the Kirk universe into 3 series later in the video. The reason why I chose a pen name was to distinguish my romance books from my other work. I have actually self-published 5 separate books under my name, Zarina Matcha, 3 of which are contemporary young adult fiction and 2 of which are poetry books. I also have a 6th book, a young adult dystopian satire that I am planning to hopefully release by the end of 2022. Romance is a very specific genre that targets a specific audience, and I didn't want to have everything mixed up together in one bucket. I wanted to have a separate name, separate email, newsletter, Goodreads page, BookBug page, everything. I wanted Diana Vale to be its own brand. I don't currently have a website for Diana Vale as I'm not sure it's entirely necessary and websites are not cheap, but long term I would like to have that space to show my Kirk books and maybe have separate pages for the characters, couples, suggested reading order, and the like. I chose the name Diana Vale because it sounds pretty and romance authory. I may have been subtly inspired by Maida Vale, which is an actual place in London. You don't need a separate KDP account to write under multiple pen names, as Amazon lets you publish under multiple names with the same KDP account. I do think that if you're going to write under totally separate genres, then writing under a pen name is a good idea. For example, if you write young adult fantasy, contemporary, and dystopia all under the YA umbrella, and your books are all dealing with similar themes but different settings, then I don't think a pen name is necessary for all 3 genres. However, if you want to then publish self-help books, I do think that that is good to have a different pen name for, so 1 pen name for young adult fiction and then another for self-help, because you're targeting different audiences. And you don't want self-help books to be recommended to people buying young adult fiction on the Amazon page. Me having a pen name is nothing to do with being embarrassed or not wanting to be associated with my romance work. It was purely a marketing decision, and I am planning on having quite a long author career, and I don't want to primarily be known as a romance author as it was never my main genre. Any future romance stories that I do, I want to leave as part of the Diana Vale umbrella. So I have been self-publishing since 2018, and initially it was all about just getting my work out there and building an online profile for myself. My self-publishing goals were not initially about creating a business, but I looked at other authors on Facebook groups and saw what they were doing, and I realized that publishing within certain genres can generate more income. I discovered the rapid releasing philosophy through the group 20 books to 50k, as well as writing to market. This is all about publishing many books within a short space of time in a popular genre. Some of the most popular genres include romance, fantasy, sci-fi, self-help, or business marketing. Authors such as Jewel Allen and Chris Fox have written books about this. Self-publishing has allowed authors to publish lots of books much faster than we would be if we were going down the traditional publishing route and going through the much longer process of pitching, being on submission, and the like. For anyone who is interested in rapid releasing fiction, I highly recommend Jewel Allen's book, Rapid Release. It's a short but highly informative read about rapid releasing and how authors can use this method to generate income from self-publishing. Jewel discusses how she chose her subgenre of clean billionaire romance, how she did lots of newsletter swaps, cross-promo with other authors, and how she managed to write a 50,000 word novel in 5 days. The book is mainly geared towards romance authors, but the method can be applied to people writing within any genre. Another author who inspired me is Yolanda Black, another romance author who specifically writes steamy contemporary interracial romance. Yolanda has published over 60 romance stories at this point, and she's managed to consistently generate a four-figure income from self-publishing. I will note that she took the rapid release thing to the max and published 40 romance stories in 2 years, which might take a toll on your physical and mental health. But regardless, she is proof that with perseverance, anyone can do this. I was researching on Amazon certain genres that tend to do very well. Genres that stood out to me were paranormal romance, reverse harem, urban fantasy, contemporary romance, and erotica. I initially wanted to try and create a young adult urban fantasy series of short stories and publish one short episodic story per week as part of a series to then create a box set of the entire series at the end. There are lots of fantasy academy books on Amazon, so I thought that this would be a really good way to make money and that I would also enjoy writing within this genre. I initially didn't want to write within the romance genre because I don't really read romance and I didn't think that I'd be very good at it. I had this assumption that romance is just smut and poorly written trash and quite prejudiced views on what is actually a really incredible and diverse genre. After a few failed attempts of writing within the fantasy and paranormal genres, I turned my attention to the contemporary realm as I've already published books within this genre. I posted in some indie author Facebook groups saying that I wanted to write romance, and the overwhelming consensus was to pick one subgenre of romance and start there due to the broadness of the genre. All of this took place between December 2020 and January 2021. In mid-January, after giving up on the serialized fantasy idea, I randomly reread Love Lessons by Jacqueline Wilson, which was one of my favorite books as a kid. The story is about a teenage girl who falls in love with her art teacher, who is also married and has a family. And the story handles this rather contentious subject quite well for a kid's book. It's not creepy or perverted, it's actually incredibly sensitive and well handled. Forbidden age gap romance is very much a taboo subject and something that people clearly find fascinating, hence there being so many books out there within this subgenre. After reading Love Lessons, I thought a lot about the appeal of forbidden romance, especially between student and teacher. I remember lying in my bed trying to take a nap and then sitting up and thinking, you know what, if 50 Shades of Grey is so popular and it's trash, then I can definitely write a romance story which is much better than that, or at least a little bit better than that. I was initially not really taking it seriously. I just wanted to write a really crappy, smutty love story about a girl who falls for her university professor. I started with this really cheesy line all about the beautiful professor Diego Valentine and how he was so hot and all the girls are crazy about him. I was pretty much laughing at the beginning and not really taking it seriously, but I ended up getting really into this story and being so excited about it that I ended up writing the first draft within 2 days at 20,000 words. I had a lot of fun writing this romance story, which I called Professor Valentine. I based it on the University of York in Northern England, which I briefly attended for a few months when I was 18. I was going to set it in York, but I changed it to Kirk, which is a fictitious location, and I changed all of the names and parts of the campus so that I didn't run the risk of potentially getting in trouble. The story is fiction, but even a fictional story about a student and professor based on an actual place could invite problems. Plus, basing it on the real place without using the exact locations meant that I didn't have to get everything geographically accurate. I was basing the story and the university on an actual location, but still having the freedom to make things up and create random bars and cafes, etc. So romance is an extremely diverse and multifaceted genre to write in. When it comes to writing romance, there are two things you must bear in mind: your subgenre and your heat level. Subgenre refers to one of the many genres within the romance umbrella. A romance story is simply a story about two or more people who fall in love, develop a romantic relationship, undergo struggles, and come together at the end. This can encompass a wide range of settings, locations, age categories, and the like. Contemporary romance is romance that is set in the contemporary present real world. Paranormal romance is also set in the contemporary present world, but it includes characters who are otherworldly creatures, such as vampires or werewolves, as well as humans. Interracial romance involves a romance between two characters of different ethnic backgrounds. Western romance is set in the American Wild West. Sports romance usually involves some kind of sport like football or baseball, maybe two characters who are falling for each other on the same sports team. Historical romance is set in the past, usually before the 1950s, I believe, to be classed as historical. Romantic suspense is a romance that has thriller elements, and so on. There are also the age categories, i.e. young adult, new adult, and adult. This obviously applies to all fiction. Young adult fiction is usually about people aged 12 to 18 and will deal with teenage struggles like coming of age and adolescence. New adult is usually about people aged 18 to 25 and often is set at university and deals with topics like leaving home or getting your first job. And then adult fiction is obviously everyone else apart from children. I already knew that I wanted to write contemporary romance, as my 3 other YA books are contemporary social realist dramas. Choosing new adult was a no-brainer, as this is my age. I was 23 when I started writing the Kirk series, and obviously the series is set at a university, so it is automatically in the new adult category. Finally, Heat Level deals with how sexually explicit you are going to be within your romance books. As mentioned earlier, Jewel Allen writes clean contemporary billionaire romance. She mentions in her rapid release book that she chose this because billionaire romance is already very popular and most of it is steamy or erotic, so she saw a clear market for clean romance. Yolanda Black writes steamy romance, meaning that there is sex on the page. There are various resources out there regarding heat levels, but personally I would say that all romance probably fits into one of 6 heat levels. Clean, mild, closed door sex, medium heat, steamy, and erotic, which is not to be confused with erotica. Clean means that there is no sex, no cursing or explicit language. Mild means that there might be a bit of cursing and kissing, but again, no sex. Closed doors means that there is sex, but it's behind closed doors and there will probably be like a fade to black, and there will also likely be cursing, swearing, and other adult themes. Medium heat includes 1 or 2 sex scenes and possibly some masturbatory fantasies or sexual fantasies. Steamy means multiple on-page sex scenes, and erotic means that sex or sexual tension is used to drive the plot and the characters are literally exploring their relationship through sexual activity. I have a short story called Tempting Desire, which is a free download through my newsletter, which I personally class as erotic romance because although there's only 1 actual sex scene, the book is mainly about sexual tension and this forms the main overall plot between the 2 characters. Personally, I think it's pretty hot. Erotic romance is not the same as erotica, as erotica is not necessarily romantic and doesn't require the couple getting together at the end. In order for a book to be considered a genre romance, the couple must be together by the end of the book in what is known as a happily ever after or a happily for now. Basically, they're together and they look like they will be together for the foreseeable future. In some cases, this may include a wedding or an engagement, but it doesn't necessarily need to, especially if you're writing young adult or new adult romance. I would class my books as medium heat to erotic in terms of heat level. So to recap, the 3 main things to consider when writing romance are your subgenre, i.e. contemporary, paranormal, historical, etc., your age category, so young adult, new adult, or adult, and your heat level from clean with no cursing to lots of sex and potentially lots of cursing. So now I'm going to discuss plotting a romance story. I am a pantser as opposed to a plotter, so a discovery writer, and I don't really like to write a full plot or full outline of my books before writing. I prefer to just let my brain shoot off onto the page. At most, I make bullet points or sometimes write a brief paragraph or 1 or 2 sentences, but I don't really do thorough outlines. I prefer to just let my thoughts go onto the page. Romance is obviously a very character-driven genre because it's about 2 or more people coming together to form a romantic relationship. But every romance story does have a distinctive plot arc, and all of my romance novellas and short stories follow the same structure. We are introduced to character A and then to character B. They meet, there's some sort of spark between them, something pulls them apart, they work through this, and then they come together in the end for the happy ending. Romancing the Beat by Gwen Hayes is an excellent book that I read before I wrote Professor Valentine. This book outlines all of the necessary steps and beats that are usually needed to write a good romance story. Once you get this very simple formula, you will be able to translate it to any romance story regardless of length, heat level, or subgenre. I highly recommend this book. I've got the link to it in the description. The most important thing when writing a romance is that there must be an obstacle for the couple to face and overcome. If they meet and get together straight away, there's no story. It would be 3 pages long. That can work sometimes in what is known as the insta-love trope, when 2 people meet and are instantly in love and get together, but there still needs to be some kind of tension and conflict, something pulling them apart. This could be as simple as long distance, family disapproval, or an age gap. Every romance story must have a struggle, because in real life, this is what relationships are like. Very hard and messy and complicated. It's rarely as simple as 2 people meet and then that's it, everything goes smoothly. Usually, even if that does happen, there's still challenges for them to overcome long after they get together. For Professor Valentine, identifying the struggles was pretty easy. He's her professor, twice her age, and he's going through a divorce. Even though both the man and the girl have very clear feelings for each other, there's still this demonstrably large obstacle that they have to overcome. In my opinion, there are 2 clear types of conflicts: internal conflicts and external conflicts. Internal conflicts refer to how the characters are feeling, and usually this involves fear. Both characters may be in a situation where they can be together, but fear and personal insecurity is tearing them apart. External conflict would refer to something like them living in different countries, having a large age gap, being co-workers who aren't supposed to get together, essentially something outside of the 2 of them which is pulling them apart and making it hard for them to be together. Again, for Professor Valentine, this was very obvious, as there was the external conflict of him being her professor and she being the student, him being twice her age, the fear of him losing his job and potentially hurting her. Most of my Kirk books involve internal conflicts where usually the characters are scared or insecure. Usually something internally is holding them back from being with the person that they like. Sometimes it's a mental health difficulty, sometimes they just feel insecure, or they feel like they're not deserving of love. This is particularly relevant as all of the characters are in their late teens or early 20s, still coming to terms with themselves and not feeling entirely confident in who they are, so these feelings of insecurity do make a lot of sense. One thing I'd like to mention is point of view. Only 3 of my Kirk books, Professor Valentine, Last Night, and I Dream of Cassie, which is a companion story to Professor Valentine, are told from a single perspective, so from one character's point of view. All of my others are from a dual perspective, which I think is much nicer as it allows me to delve into both characters and what's going on in their heads. This has also helped me in making my books slightly longer, as Professor Valentine and Last Night are my shortest novellas at just over 20,000 words each, while all of my others are about 30 to 40,000 words. Point of view does depend on taste and personal choice, but personally I think that romance is much more interesting when it's told from both perspectives, as you do get to explore and develop both characters more fully. All of my books, apart from my short story Tempting Desire, are also written in first person, but again this just comes down to personal choice, and I don't think that there is a right or wrong way. You can write in first person or third person depending on your preference. I enjoy writing romance in first person because I like to really get into the character's head and explore their own perspective, but third person limited works just as well. So after writing Professor Valentine, I had several other romance story ideas going for the series. I wanted to play around with and explore as many romance tropes as I could. My second book, Last Night, used the trope of a one-night stand which turns into a relationship. My third book, Cherry Kisses, was about a lesbian couple and later became part of the Kirk Gals series, and I explored the trope of opposites attracting. My fourth book, Capture Us, explored the friends to lovers trope with a guy and a girl who have close feelings for each other, but the guy has a girlfriend. My fifth book, Finally There, used the trope of two students who went to school together, reuniting and getting together later on. My sixth book, Not You, is an enemies to lovers story about two students who meet at the University Debating Society. My seventh book, Marco Polo, explored an MM relationship. And my eighth book, initially called Cassie and Diego, although the name later changed to Forever Valentine, was a direct sequel to Professor Valentine and explored some of the issues that I brought up within the first book. I initially thought that this 8-book collection would be my series, but for reasons which I'll go into shortly, I changed trajectory. Apart from Professor Valentine, which I wrote in 2 days, each book took me about 10 to 12 days to write, with an average daily word count of about 4,000 to 5,000. Some days I've written as much as 7,000 or 8,000 words, and other days I've only written like 1,000 words. My daily writing word count has increased dramatically since working on these books. In the past, I would average 2,000 words per writing session and be pretty happy with that. And now 1,000 words seems like so little, which is quite funny, as objectively speaking, 1,000 words in a day is quite a lot. I think that's about standard. But when you're rapid releasing, you do learn to write really quickly, and once you've got a good momentum going, you'll find out that you'll be able to crank out a lot of words per writing session, especially if you're writing stories that all follow a similar formula. So now I'm going to discuss the main challenges I have faced while embarking on this project. I published Professor Valentine in February 2021. In March, I published Last Night. In April, I published Cherry Kisses. In May, I published Capture Us. And in June, I published Finally There. My next two books, Not You and Marco Polo, were out on pre-order and set to release in July and August 2021. By June, I was seriously disheartened. My plan of writing and publishing romance to make money was not happening. I had 5 books out and they weren't really selling. I didn't understand what I was doing wrong. I was only averaging like 1 sale per day, if that. I had a newsletter, a Facebook page and group, I was using story origin swaps, and I thought the books were good. I mean, they were decent books, and the covers were nice, I'd gotten them edited, my editors really liked them, I thought everything was going okay, and I wasn't doing any ads yet as I wanted to wait until I had more out in this series, but I thought I would at least be making more money than like £5 per month. In early July, I posted about this in the Facebook group 20 Books to 50k, asking for some serious advice on why my rapid releasing romance project was not making me the kind of money that I'd hoped. I got a lot of advice, but the main 2 issues that stood out to me were my book covers were wrong and I was mixing LGBT couples within a series of heterosexual couples, which was usually not done. There are even romance authors who will just write MM or just write MF. Another thing mentioned was the length of the books. Professor Valentine and Last Night were both just over 20,000 words long. The others were all about 30,000 words. I thought this length was okay, as Yolanda Black has mainly published novellas of this length, some as short as 10,000 words, and I thought that that would be fine because I've been putting out 1 book per month. However, most authors publishing books of that length are putting out 2 or sometimes 3 titles per month. They're taking rapid release to another level. Novels of over 50,000 words tend to sell more than novellas of 30,000 words, particularly within the new adult genre. Now, I am what you would call an underwriter, meaning that I don't tend to go on and on in my fiction. I kind of just like to get to the point. All of my books are fairly short. My longest project is my upcoming novel Tic Tac Toe, which is currently over 80,000 words, and initially that was 30k and then 50k, so it's actually increased. I've also been working on that book since 2018. With my romance novellas, the plan was to kind of churn them out quickly and do short books that gave a nice little punch and left you wanting more. For some reason, I can't seem to make any of my romance books be longer than 40,000 words. That does seem to be my maximum amount. But then there were authors mentioning that they wrote short books of like 20k words each and were still making 4 figures per month. So I was really confused. I'll address how I worked around the word count thing in a moment, but the main overarching issue was definitely my book covers. I really liked my initial covers, but they weren't right for the genre. Remember how early in this video I mentioned the importance of genre? It really matters and it makes a difference. You should definitely think about the genre you're writing in and base your covers on that. Unfortunately, my covers looked more paranormal or fantastical romance rather than contemporary romance, and they also had 2 people who weren't touching rather than an actual couple touching on the cover. After some deliberation, I contacted my designer to redo the covers with a plain white background with a silvery fade in, and instead of having 2 people on the cover, just having 1 guy on the cover, save for the lesbian romance, which obviously has a woman on the cover. Another big change was taking my LGBT books out of my Kirk University series and creating separate spin-off series. This is how I ended up with my 3 series, Kirk University, Kirk Gals, and Kirk Guys, all of which make up the Kirk Universe. I took Cherry Kisses and Marco Polo out of the Kirk University series and created separate series for them, which is really easy to do on Amazon. In order to distinguish my Kirk Guys covers from my Kirk University covers, I had the titles of the Kirk Guys books be in blue, and the male models are shirtless because the books are steamier, and it also creates that obvious visual distinction. The Kirk University covers have the front titles in silver, and the men are fully clothed, mainly because for Professor Valentine, I had a professor on the cover and I wanted him to, look professional and be wearing a blazer, so I just needed the other covers to fit the theme. For Cherry Kisses, which is currently the only book in the Kirk Gals series, the title on the front and the spine is in pink, again to create that visual difference. Now, to sort out the issue of length, I decided to create box sets, which people in the 20 books to 50k group also suggested. All of my books are in Kindle Unlimited, and about half of my money comes from Kindle page reads rather than from actual individual sales. You can earn more money from page reads with longer books or with box sets, as readers are reading more pages, thus giving you more money. You earn more the more pages readers read. I had been planning on creating box sets anyway long term, but now that I had this new split series, this made more sense. I also made Professor Valentine permanently free on Amazon, the ebook only. It's really simple to make a book perma-free. You simply contact Amazon to have the book taken out of Kindle Unlimited if it's in there, upload the book to other digital retailers. I do mine through Draft Digital, make the book cost nothing, and then contact Amazon to price match the book. Unfortunately, I have to keep contacting Amazon every few months because for some stupid reason, the book keeps on going back to 99 cents. Finally, I plan to write sequels to all of the stories, not just to Professor Valentine. I was planning a sequel to that one anyway, but then realized that if I did a sequel to that one, I might as well just do them for all of them. Plus, it would make more sense, and it meant that I could then create duets, which would then thus mean that I would have bigger page counts. So far, I've only done this with Professor Valentine and Last Night. I have duets for both of them. The first one is called Cassie and Diego, which contains Professor Valentine and Forever Valentine, and the second one is called Saskia and Malik, the names of the characters, which contains Last Night and Cabin Fever, its sequel. So by August 2021, I now had 6 books out in the Kirk University series, 1 book out in my Kirk Gals series, and 1 book in my Kirk Guys series. I also now had 1 box set containing books 1 to 5 in my Kirk University series, and 1 duet, Cassie and Diego. I released Cabin Fever, the sequel to Last Night, in September, along with the Saskia and Malik duet. I think doing these sequels is a great idea in solving the length issue, and I was planning to release the other 3 sequels by the end of 2021, along with the accompanying duets. Once I had changed all of my covers and shuffled around the series, I set Marco Polo for release on the 30th of August, the same day as Forever Valentine. By the time it released, I had a total of 28 pre-orders for Marco Polo. This is more than I've ever had on any book, with my average for pre-orders being about 2 to 3 pre-orders per book. Seeing that made me realize just how popular romance is. I enjoyed writing that story so much that I instantly had another idea from story called Tender Strokes, and then a third one called Rock Me. Marco Polo is 35,000 words, and both Tender Strokes and Rock Me are about 40,000 words each. For Tender Strokes, I had 9 pre-orders, and for Rock Me, I only had 2, but that book has generated me the most income so far, which is probably because of the cover. So if we go back to the whole subgenre thing within romance, my Kirk Guys books are specifically new adult, contemporary, steamy, interracial romance. That's very specific. Niching down, especially within the romance genre, is a very good idea, and anywhere that you can find a market that is hungry for that sort of thing is great. Bear in mind, romance is a very small subsection of romance, but it does go very, very deep, and there's a lot of money that can be made from writing within that genre. Is very, very popular and very specific. And my books have honestly been a pleasure to write. They've been some of my favorite romance books to work on, and I've also been reading quite a bit of contemporary as well to really get into the genre. For women writing romance, I think the best thing is to read as much romance as you can within the genre you're writing in. So obviously I've been reading as much contemporary romance as I can, both clean and steamy. Definitely use the internet to look up things like bottom, top, douching, fisting, and working out the mechanics of this. This is going to sound hilarious, but honestly, if you're writing about gay sex and you're not a gay man, then for God's sake, utilize those porn sites. Go on porn sites and search for gay porn watch what they're doing, and then write it down. I know that sounds so funny, but seriously, it really helps a lot, especially if you're trying to figure out certain things. And when you really get to know a character, you're not really thinking about things like their race or sexual orientation. It's more like, these are young people around my age who are struggling with things that I struggle with, like insecurities and fear and anxiety, and finding their place in the world. What are their hobbies? What are their interests? What are their fears? Are they talkative and outgoing, or are they shy and reserved? This is what matters when creating a character. And aside from where necessary, I really do give little thought to things like race and sexual orientation and the like. I don't really think, oh, I'm writing about a gay person. I think I'm writing about so-and-so. You know, I get into their head. I think about who they are. That is what is interesting to me. So yeah, you know, if you're a woman, you want to write gay romance, write a human being. That's really the best advice. Think this is a human being. And then for technical stuff, use the internet. So now I'm going to talk about all of the money that I have earned from my Diana Vale books, and then discuss my expenses, which unfortunately have not been small. I'm still way away from profiting, unfortunately, but fingers crossed, I am looking at this as a long-term project, so I am trying to stay positive. I'm going to give my pricing in British pounds and in US dollars. First, I'm going to just give my financial stats per month and then discuss my expenses separately. By the way, all of my books, apart from my box sets, are available in paperback as well as ebook. I do make more money from my ebooks than my paperbacks, which is to be expected as I'm mostly making money from Kindle Unlimited page reads, but I have sold some paperbacks as well, and it's nice to have books out in paperback. I'd say maybe 30% of my sales are paperback and maybe 70% are ebook. So starting with February 2021, first book Professor Valentine, which was initially 99p and also in Kindle Unlimited, my monthly earnings were £4.33 or $6.03. March now, with 2 books released, my earnings were £7.18 or $9.89. April, with 3 books released, my earnings were £12.55 or $17.49. May, 4 books released, earnings were £11.08 or $15.73. June, 5 books released, my earnings were £10.59 or $14.70. July, I released 1 box set containing books 1 to 5 of the Kirk series, but no new stories. My earnings were £12.79 or $17.89. August, I released 2 books and 1 duet, so 3 books in total. And by this point, I had changed all of my covers and created the 3 separate series, as well as making Professor Valentine be permanently free on Amazon. My earnings were £79.40, so quite an increase. This was actually $109.26, so technically in American money, I had reached 3 figures per month. September, no new releases, my earnings were £62.70 or $84.88. October, I released 2 new books and 1 duet, so again, 3 books in total, and my earnings were £86.36 or $118.22. November, I released 1 book and 1 3-book box set, and my earnings were £66.97 or $89.31. December, no new releases, but I did do a big sale at the end of the year where I discounted all of the prices for my books for 3 days, and my earnings were the best so far at £95.01 or $128.19. So in total, in 2021, I earned £448.97 from my Diana Vale books, or $611.55. If I look at my highest earning books from 2021, 3 of the top 5 are my books. The number 1 is my 5-book box set, and my Cassie and Diego duet is also on there. So far in 2022, my money earned has been a lot less because at the time of making this video, I've only published 1 new book and 2 box sets, and I haven't actually had any Amazon ads running since December 2021. I paused all of my ads and decided to just leave them until I actually had my full 10-book Kirk series done and had some more books out there. My 2022 earnings are smaller, but they are still fairly consistent. January 2022, no new releases, earnings were £58.98 or $79.04. February, 1 new release and 2 box sets, so 3 books released in total. My earnings were £33.30 or $44.67. March, no new releases, my earnings were £54.68 or $71.59. April, no new releases, my earnings were £44.87. May, no new releases, my earnings were £36.12 or $45.61. June, no new releases. My earnings were £36.77 or $44.81. My total earnings so far this year are £270.48 or $348.52, and that's without any Amazon ads or much general marketing really besides my newsletter. If I look at my top 6 earning books, 4 of those are my books and the box set, and then 1 is the Kirk University 1-5 box set, and then finally Forever Valentine. So it's pretty consistent that my box sets, duets, and individual books are what are selling the most. As you can see, it's tough to maintain earning money unless you're consistently putting out new work. If you want to earn money doing this, then you have to be consistently publishing until you are making enough where you can just sit back and let the books sell themselves and mainly just spend a few quid per day on ads. But unfortunately, it's no easy feat. I am planning on releasing 3 Kirk Guys books in August of this year, 2022, as well as 2 box sets, one containing books 4 to 6 in my Kirk Guys series, and another containing books 1 to 6 in my Kirk Guys series. My books are all standalones with no planned sequels, and apart from Marco Polo, the first one, the word count for each book is about 40 to 45,000 words. I also have 3 books planned to do and release potentially in December, which are all sequels to Capture Us, Finally There, and Not You. I'll be releasing them individually, collectively as part of a 5-book box set containing books 6 to 10 of the Kirk University main series, as duets of each couple, and then as a 10-book box set containing books 1 to 10 of the Kirk University series. So I only have to actually write 3 new books, but all of these box sets are what will hopefully be making me more money. I wouldn't advise doing the books this way with all of these sequels being in different orders, as it probably makes the reading order look a bit confusing, but again, this is just another thing I've had to learn and it wasn't entirely planned, it just kind of happened that way. By the time they're all completed, it will look more clear, but right now it probably seems kind of confusing and my reading order probably looks a bit more straightforward. So now we're going to break down the expenses. To prevent us from being here for hours, I'm only going to examine costs from 2021 and just look at the most important expenses. I'm splitting this into 2 sections, production costs and marketing costs. Production costs are things like covers and editing, and marketing costs are things like Amazon ads and newsletter builders. I purchase all of my book covers from a lady on Fiverr called Olivia Pro Design, and she always does a fantastic job with the book covers. She has designed every single book cover for every single book that I have published to date. I also hired editors via Fiverr for my Diana Vale books. All of my books have been edited by 2 ladies, one of whom is unfortunately no longer running her services. Links to their handles are in the description. I used Fiverr to find editors rather than looking for a private editor, as I didn't want to fork out hundreds and hundreds of pounds per book getting each of them edited. After all, these are light, steamy reads, not historical fiction or literary fiction. They're commercial books, and I didn't want to spend £300 per book getting each one edited. The editors just do basic light copy editing, so grammar, spelling, consistency, and punctuation. Some authors may not like me saying this, but I really don't think it's worth spending thousands of pounds on covers and editing if you're rapid releasing. I think it's better to write the best story that you can write that is relevant to the genre, edit it yourself, and then pay for some simple proofreading. If you're already a decent writer, then this also helps. I'm already pretty good at my craft, I'm good with grammar and all of the likes, so I'm not really needing to spend so much money on editing. I also self-edit them as well, of course, before I get them edited by someone else. Generally, I did not set out to write Pulitzer Prize-winning novels. These are escapist, steamy romance novellas. So in 2021, I spent £433.94 on covers. This includes paperback, ebook, and 3D cover mock-ups, and bear in mind, I did change my covers, so that also contributed. For editing, I spent £441.30 in total in 2021 on getting my books edited. Some additional publication costs include £9.60 for my Diana Vale logo, £179.99 for vellum to format my ebooks, £81.03 for paperback proofs of my books and for legal deposit, £87 on deposit photo images. I later paid about £99 for a yearly subscription because it was just cheaper. Photos were for me to get pictures of my characters for my newsletter and for TikTok, which I'm not actually really using. I think I tried and then I just kind of gave up. I basically just forgot about TikTok at this point. So now, marketing costs. My main source of marketing has been Amazon ads, newsletter builders, and a couple of YouTuber promos. I currently have 1,624 people on my Diana Vale newsletter, and that number would have been higher, but I do regularly cull my newsletter list to get rid of people who are not opening my emails. I have used sites like Authors XP, Book Sweeps, and Story Origin to build up my newsletter, which I highly recommend. I have used a lot of Authors XP marketing services, including their newsletter builders, book spotlight services, and daily deals. Authors XP is an amazing site for authors, which every author should utilize, especially indie authors. So obviously this has not been easy. Rapid releasing is not for the faint-hearted, and doing this while running a YouTube channel where I was posting several videos per month and spending lots of time editing them quickly became very challenging. By the end of 2021, I was incredibly exhausted, and January was sort of a month that I took to recover from the stress that I underwent during this process. My biggest overall advice for rapid releasing is, first of all, make sure that you really love what you are writing. I have grown to adore my Kirk universe. Building this world and these characters has been amazing. I never thought that I would write romance, but these books are not just romance books, they're coming of age books, which is a genre I very much enjoy writing in, and I get to explore social issues like mental health and the like, which I've already done in my young adult fiction books. Definitely take care of yourself, get regular sleep, and exercise regularly. I love to swim, and I also do home workouts. Make sure that you eat well and often, and also try and create specific days when you are going to work. There's been so many times when I've been working at 2 in the morning, which I really don't recommend. I think it's better to try and treat this like a regular job where you get up, write during the day, and then go to bed at night, and mainly work during the week so that your weekends can be a bit more relaxed. Obviously, if you do have a full-time job as well, then doing this will be tricky, and I can't really give any advice on this as I have no other job. This, along with YouTube, is basically all I do, and I do receive benefits and live with my mother, so I don't have to worry about rent, thankfully. But even if you do have a full-time job, if you dedicate as little as 2 hours per week to doing this, you would be amazed at what you can accomplish. I'm still nowhere near where I hoped to be when I started this project, but at the end of the day, I am really proud of what I've done, and I don't regret doing this whatsoever. It's made me a better writer, it's made me appreciate the romance genre and really love exploring these characters and getting to lose myself in their world. If even one person is able to enjoy any of my stories, I feel grateful because writing is life.